All right, so today we're diving into something that it's honestly it's a tough one.
It really is.
Yeah, it's one of those stories that just hits you in the gut and leaves you kind of reeling.
Absolutely. And it raises some really, really uncomfortable questions.
Okay, so picture this, an 11-year-old girl just going about her day, and then suddenly she's confronted by two men.
Yeah, two men who, according to reports, grab her, start pulling at her clothes, and even try to drag her under a culvert.
I mean, right off the bat, you just think about the terror that this poor girl must have experienced.
It's unimaginable.
And what makes this whole situation even more disturbing is the legal outcome.
Because the Allahabad High Court in India ruled that these actions did not constitute attempted rape.
Not attempted rape.
It's a verdict that just leaves you stunned, honestly.
It really does. And, as we were prepping for this deep dive, we had news reports, legal analyses all laid out, and I gotta say, I was struggling to wrap my head around it.
Well, that's the thing, right? We're all kind of wired to see certain actions and immediately understand the intent behind them. Especially in a case like this, where the vulnerability of the victim and the nature of the assault seems so clear-cut.
Exactly. You'd think it would be pretty straightforward.
But then you have this legal interpretation that seems to completely disconnect from that common sense understanding.
So our mission here, I guess, is to try and unpack this judgment, understand the reasoning behind it, and explore the implications of this kind of legal precedent.
Because the implications are huge. Not just for this specific case, but for how we as a society protect our most vulnerable members.
I think everyone listening right now probably has the same initial reaction I did, which is just straight up disbelief.
It's hard to process how physically assaulting a child, trying to remove their clothing, attempting to take them to a secluded area, all of that doesn't automatically equate to attempted rape in the eyes of the law.
It just doesn't add up. It
Yeah.
feels wrong on such a fundamental level.
So let's break it down. Let's start with the facts as they were presented to the court.
All right, so we had these two individuals, Pawan and Akash, and they're accused of grabbing this young girl's breasts, breaking the drawstring of her pajamas, and attempting to pull her under a culvert.
Each one of those actions on its own is horrifying, but when you put them all together, it paints a very, very disturbing picture.
And the court even acknowledges the harm and the illegality of the actions.
Right. They're not saying that what these men did was okay by any stretch, but the Allahabad High Court ultimately ruled that these actions did not legally amount to attempted rape.
With Justice Ramanohar Narayan Mishra stating that there wasn't enough evidence to conclusively prove the intent to commit rape.
So you have the physical assault, you have the attempt to move the victim to a hidden location, and still the court doesn't see it as sufficient to classify it as attempted rape.
It's just mind-boggling.
And this is where the legal specifics get really tricky. The original charges were filed under Section 376 of the Indian Penal Code, which deals with rape, and Section 18 of the POCSO Act.
POCSO being the Protection of Children from Sexual Offenses Act.
Right. And Section 18 of that act was specifically designed to ensure that even the preparation for sexual offenses against children is treated with extreme seriousness.
So you'd think that would cover this situation pretty clearly.
You would. But the High Court decided to downgrade the charges.
To Section 354B of the IPC, which deals with assault with intent to disrobe, and Sections 9 and 10 of the POCSO Act, which cover aggravated sexual assault.
But crucially, not attempted rape in this specific legal context.
It's like they're saying, okay, they wanted to take her clothes off, but that doesn't necessarily mean they were going to rape her.
As if those two things are somehow unrelated or that one doesn't almost always lead to the other in these kinds of scenarios.
Yeah, like trying to undress someone in that context isn't a giant red flag or anything.
It's a very, very strange distinction to make.
And the court's reasoning seems to rely heavily on the fact that certain actions were completed.
Right. It's like they're saying, well, they broke the pajama string, but they didn't fully remove her clothes, or they touched her breasts, but they didn't engage in other specific sexual acts at that moment.
It's like they're hyper-focused on what didn't happen, instead of the obvious implications of what did happen.
It reminds me of that analogy that was brought up in some of the articles we read, the one about attempted bank robbery.
Oh yeah, if someone walks into a bank with a weapon, demands money, but then leaves without actually getting any cash, would we say that wasn't attempted robbery?
Of course not. The intent was clearly there. The initial steps were taken. The fact that they didn't complete the act doesn't negate the attempt.
Exactly. So it really begs the question, what does legally constitute an attempt if these actions against a child don't meet that definition?
It seems like the court is setting an incredibly high bar for proving intent in these cases.
And that's terrifying because it sends the message that a certain level of violence, a certain level of violation has to occur before the law truly recognizes the threat.
And that's just not acceptable, especially when we're talking about the safety and well-being of children.
The public reaction to this verdict has been completely understandable. There's this widespread sense of disbelief, outrage even.
Because this isn't just some abstract legal debate. This is about real-life consequences for real people.
And the online discussions around this case really highlight that visceral reaction. People are comparing it to saying that trying to take candy from a baby isn't attempted theft.
Or making sarcastic comments about how the bar for attempted rape is now set so high that it's practically in outer space.
It's a way of expressing that deep disconnect between the legal interpretation and what most people would consider common sense.
And this case has much broader implications, too. It forces us to look at how our legal system is perceived and how well it actually protects children.
The POCSO Act was specifically created to address the vulnerability of minors in these situations.
But if the interpretation of attempt is so narrow that it excludes cases like this one, then what's the point?
Right. It's like saying the law only kicks in once the harm is already done.
Which defeats the entire purpose of preventative measures.
It's like waiting for a fire to engulf an entire building before calling the fire department.
We need to be proactive, not reactive, when it comes to protecting children from these kinds of threats.
It's almost absurd that we're even having to explain this.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to explain this legal outcome to someone who's not familiar with all the legal jargon and intricacies.
They'd probably think we were making it up.
Right. So you're telling me that grabbing a child, assaulting them, trying to take them to a secluded place doesn't count as attempted rape?
What planet are you from?
It's darkly funny in a way,
Yeah.
but it just underscores the absurdity of the situation.
And it's a reminder that sometimes the law can be completely out of touch with basic human decency.
It's disheartening, but cases like this also serve as a wake-up call.
They force us to confront these uncomfortable realities and to demand better.
We need to support organizations that advocate for the rights of victims, especially children.
We need to educate ourselves and others about consent boundaries and the complexities of sexual assault.
And most importantly, we need to keep having these conversations.
Because silence and apathy only allow these injustices to continue.
So, to sum up this deeply unsettling case, the Allahabad High Court's interpretation of attempted rape has sparked serious concerns.
The idea that the assault and attempted abduction of an 11-year-old girl didn't demonstrate a clear enough intent to commit rape raises some very troubling questions about the effectiveness of our legal system in protecting the most vulnerable.
And it leaves us with a final thought to ponder.
What would the world look like if legal interpretations consistently focused on the completion of a crime rather than the intent and the actions leading up to it?
What kind of safety and security would we truly have if that were the standard?
It makes you think about the role of common sense in our pursuit of justice and whether our legal systems are truly aligned with what we as a society consider right and wrong.
And that's something we all need to keep thinking about long after this episode is over.
Have-
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. It's been a tough one, but these are the conversations we need to be having.
I completely agree.
Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and let's work together to build a world where justice prevails.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right, folks, take care.
See you next time.